Tanya Roberts, the former Charlie's Angels starlet, passed away on January 4th at the age of 65. Roberts will be forever remembered for her celebrated acting career, in addition to having a large heart full of love. Those who knew her recall her as being a loving and supportive friend, and the kind of person you'd turn to when you needed support. She shared 32 happy years with her late husband Barry before he too passed away in 2006. The bond they shared through those years was unbreakable. In this video, we're going to take a closer look at who Tanya's husband Barry was and how he contributed to her story. Their secret recipe for a happy marriage: don't force it. In an interview with her publicist and friend Mike Pingel, Tanya revealed that she and Barry were, as she put it, best pals. When asked what the secret to their relationship's success was, the former Bond girl didn't have much to say. "I'm not really sure," she said. "We don't celebrate anniversaries. I feel that it only leads to divorce," she added. She went on to explain that she and Barry were both very physical people with similar sets of interests. They weren't just lovers, but they were also best friends. Instead of focusing too much on keeping their marriage afloat and the spark alive, they instead did their best to support each other's passions and keep an open channel of communication. How it all began. Their whirlwind romance started in 1973 after Tanya moved to New York City after spending several years in Canada living with her mother. For a time, she had hitchhiked across the states, soaking in the counterculture movement of the day, but that's a story for another time. When she met Barry, he was minding his own business while waiting in line for a movie. Apparently, Tanya made the first move, and it wasn't long before they were dating. At the time, Barry was a psychology student with aspirations of becoming a screenwriter, and Tanya was trying her best to transition from modeling and doing commercials to establish herself as a reputable actress. Barry and Tanya got hitched in 1974. Eventually, Miss Roberts started landing more substantial roles, but for a time, the only parts she could score were in erotic B-movies. But that was the price she had to pay to make a name for herself in such a cutthroat, competitive industry. In time, her patience and perseverance paid off. As Tanya starred in hit films such as A View to a Kill, Sins of Desire, and Charlie's Angels, her ever-supportive husband stood by her side to cheer her on. Barry, too, started finding his place in show business, working as a writer and occasional actor. But we'll get to that in a minute, so bear with us. And if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you like it and hit subscribe to our channel. Barry's final years were full of pain and suffering. After battling with encephalitis for 4 years, Barry died in June of 2006 at age 60. Encephalitis is the inflammation of the brain tissue typically caused by a virus or bacteria. In most cases, the patient fully recovers, but in more severe cases, the infection directly affects the brain cells, leading to their death. In Barry's case, he ended up suffering from severe complications, including seizures and mental impairments that left him in a constant state of disorientation and confusion. Tanya Roberts stepped up to the plate. Tanya was a cast member on That 70s Show where she played Midge Pinciotti when Barry got sick. She left the series in 2001 to care for her terminally ill husband. Not only did she have to see his body slowly deteriorate before her eyes, but she also bore the awful burden of watching his mind slip away as well. His death was devastating to Tanya, but after so many years of watching him suffer, it must have also been a minor relief of sorts. Even so, adjusting to life after his passing certainly wasn't a walk in the park. They'd been a couple for over 3 decades. They had spent so much of their lives with each other. She hardly knew what to do with herself when he was no longer there by her side. It was almost as if she had to relearn how to be herself. Even though she and Barry had always had very separate professional lives, their personal lives had been deeply intertwined. Tanya's second marriage and death. After Barry died, Tanya was eventually able to find love once again, which did wonders for her mental well-being too. She and her long-term partner, Lance O'Brien, were together for 18 years before her death on January 4, 2021. It's reported the cause of her death was a complication related to an untreated urinary tract infection. Most people don't typically die from UTIs, but in her case, sepsis took over, leading to septic shock. According to her publicist, the infection first spread to her kidney, gallbladder, and liver before it entered into her bloodstream. There was very little indication that she was battling an infection in the days leading up to her death. Those close to her reported she was in good spirits and optimistic about the then upcoming New Year. She had maintained a very active presence on social media, hosting video chats on Zoom and Facebook during the pandemic in the months leading up to her death. It was on Christmas Eve, after taking her dogs for a walk, that she came back home feeling fatigued and lightheaded. Something was wrong, but she still didn't know what. After she collapsed, she was rushed to the hospital. There was then a bit of confusion. TMZ prematurely reported her death on January 3rd, after assuming she had passed away based upon a statement from O'Brien, where he mentioned paying her a visit on that day to say his goodbyes. Despite the fact her death was called a day sooner than it actually occurred, she was still in critical condition and intubated at the time of the report, and passed away the next day. Essentially, because of the confusion, O'Brien had to grieve her loss twice. Barry and Tanya were a lot alike. Both Tanya and her late husband Barry were both raised in New York City. Barry was born April 3, 1946. Even though Tanya clearly had more star power than her late husband, Barry still managed to make a name for himself in show business. He was a talented person despite the fact that he has few credits to his name. His first television role was in 1981 on a series called Our Magazine. He was also the screenwriter of Legal Tender in 1991. That film starred his wife, Tanya, as a woman that desperately tries to save her struggling family business the only way she knows how, by flaunting her sex appeal. Tanya was the one to propose. Most of the time, it's a man who goes down on one knee and asks for a woman's hand in marriage. But in Tanya and Barry's case, it was Mrs. Roberts that did the asking. It's been reported she decided to throw tradition to the wind and ask for her future husband's hand in marriage while they were both waiting for a train at a subway station. Despite the fact they spent 32 years of their lives married to each other, Barry and Tanya never had any children. Tanya and her husband never shared why they didn't have children, but it's really none of our business. They had a happy life together. Barry and Tanya bought a home together in 1999 in the Hollywood Hills. They made sure to pick a property that was sufficiently tucked away so they could enjoy their privacy. They paid $780,000 for the 2,600-square-foot home, which offers 360-degree views of LA surrounding every room. The property features stunning gardens, palm trees, and a koi pond equipped with its very own wooden bridge. Tanya and Barry both appreciated the location for its vibrant wildlife. She told Closer Weekly back in 2015 that living there was a lot like being in the country, but that civilization and the hustle and bustle of the city wasn't far away whenever they needed it. She called the property the home she'd always dreamed of. After Barry died in 2006, she continued to live there with Lance O'Brien until her death. It really is a shame Tanya Roberts passed so young, especially considering the circumstances surrounding her death. But at least throughout her life, she had loving people around her to keep her company and support her in her passions and goals. Although there really isn't much information available on her late husband Barry, from what we do know, he sounded like a very considerate and supportive husband. Before you go, leave your favorite memory of Tanya Roberts in the comments section. Do you remember her best from That 70s Show or Charlie's Angels? Either way, let's pay our respects by remembering her life and career. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it and subscribe to Facts Verse if you haven't already. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.